On October 6th, the 82-year-old French writer Annie Ernaux was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature 2022. The reason cited was her courage and clinical acuity in uncovering the roots of alienation and the constraints of human memory. Her masterpiece, The Years, was widely acclaimed by the public and profoundly influenced millions of readers. This is a truly unique autobiography where Annie Ernaux recounts her life not using I, but rather we or she. She skillfully interweaves collective and personal memories with a sociological perspective to truthfully and vividly portray the growth of a woman from childhood to old age, spanning 60 years in an ever-changing world. Those years are like an old photo album, where each glance reveals the mistakes, disappointments, and sufferings from different stages of life. It is at these junctures that every decision can alter one's destiny. Some choose correctly, others err, some move forward, while others remain stuck in the past. Reading this book allows you to follow the author through her life's journey, a path filled with both sharp thorns and fragrant flowers, to understand how one should truly live and what choices one should make at each stage of life. When young, there are always words that help you defy the current. Annie was born into a small town in Normandy, France. Her childhood was marked by poverty. Her home was surrounded by small, dilapidated houses with decaying furniture. Due to the harsh living conditions, children in the area constantly faced starvation and death from infectious diseases every year. Her father initially worked on a farm, then as a factory worker, while her mother dropped out of school early, married, and sold sundry goods. However, financial constraints and physical toil likely eroded the love and warmth parents could offer their children. In Annie's memory, her father was an alcoholic, crude in his speech and behavior, while her mother was exceedingly strict. People living at the bottom of society, unable to change their circumstances on their own, placed all their hopes for a better future on their children. During her formative years, society was deeply conservative. For a girl, no matter how beautiful, educated, or intelligent, nothing was as important as preserving her chastity and dignity. Under this value system, the mother became the strictest overseer for her daughter until marriage. Girls were not allowed to watch movies or read anything related to love, nor could they wear short skirts or brightly colored clothes. In her teenage years, Annie never went out alone, nor did she ever attend a social gathering. The adolescent Annie grew increasingly curious about the feeling of being in love. She secretly watched romantic films and read novels, then tried dating a boy. However, Annie worried that her excuses for going out would eventually be exposed, so she quickly ended the relationship. When she turned 18, Annie had the opportunity to work part-time while studying at a summer camp. She finally felt free. At this missionary school, Annie was tall and dressed simply. On the surface, she appeared to be a well-behaved, diligent, and studious girl, but deep down, she harbored many desires. She often envied her wealthy classmates, wishing to dress fashionably like them to attract attention and affection. Then, one day at her first dance party, Annie deliberately took off her thick glasses and tousled her hair to look more appealing. A group leader named H, the first boy to ask Annie to dance, took advantage of a few seconds when the lights in the room went out to steal a kiss. Annie had actually noticed this tall, handsome blonde boy beforehand. She just hadn't expected H to make the first move. This was an entirely new experience for Annie. She thought she was about to embark on a wonderful romance. However, H was, in fact, a seasoned player in love, and he only intended to toy with her. The next day, Annie discovered H with another beautiful girl. Overwhelmed with despair, Annie ran from H's room but was unfortunately witnessed by some of her campmates. They immediately surrounded her, mocking her embarrassing failure. They even dumped a bucket of water on Annie. The shouts and taunts grew louder. Through her drenched hair, she saw H, then darted through the crowd, screaming his name for help and throwing herself into his arms. But H only smirked, said nothing, and turned to walk back to his room. Annie was deeply hurt and disillusioned by love. From then on, she lost herself and started engaging in wild parties, dancing, reveling, and living a rebellious life. She also began to neglect her studies, and her part-time job became lax, leading the summer camp to reject her reapplication. More heartbreakingly, her recklessness caused the young woman to taste bitter fruit. She found herself unexpectedly pregnant. What would her life become? How would she face her parents and the conservative society of the time? Just imagining it was suffocating and heartbreaking. Fear, loneliness, and a sense of being adrift engulfed this girl who had just turned 18. She didn't know what to do. But in that moment of despair, a light at the end of the tunnel flickered into existence. One day, Annie read a book titled *The Second Sex. From this book, Annie felt as if she had suddenly awakened. She realized that her relationship with H was not at all equal, and there was no love. He only saw her as a tool to kill his loneliness, a victim he could discard at will. Annie wanted to become an independent and self-reliant person. She had to escape this ignorant, obscure life. She also realized that diligent study was the only path to redeem herself. Therefore, Annie gathered all her courage to secretly have an abortion, donned simple clothes, and immersed herself in a sea of books. Finally, thanks to her hard work, she passed her university entrance exams. After entering university, she felt happier than ever. She read extensively, studied literature, practiced writing, paid attention to social issues, participated in various activities, and earned the highest scholarship. After graduating, Annie became a teacher. She now had a respectable job, could live independently in a big city, and had completely escaped the nightmare of her former slum. Through her efforts in education, she lifted herself out of life at the bottom of society. By reading many books, she opened up a new world for herself and found her own path. When young, choosing to go to school might seem simple to many, but it can profoundly influence the entire course of one's life. Annie's journey in her youth, as depicted in the book, once again proves to us that education is not only a way to escape poverty, but also the most powerful tool to help a person soar into their future through their own strength. Not a few people say that education is not the only escape, nor is it the best path to wealth and success. But in reality, for many ordinary people, especially children living in difficult conditions, going to school and reading extensively is the fastest shortcut to change one's destiny. This is not an empty theoretical statement, but a statement of immense weight, the full significance of which we may only truly feel at the end of our lives. I myself am someone who, every day, from the bottom of my heart, is incredibly grateful to my mother. No matter how difficult our economic situation was, no matter that she had to single-handedly raise me for over 20 arduous years, my mother still tried her best to ensure I could go to school. That opportunity led me to school and to befriend books, and these books have completely changed my destiny. They helped me broaden my horizons, allowing me to look up at the stars even when stuck in a mire of sadness, to dispel prejudices, transcend ordinariness, embrace both extremes of suffering and happiness, accept imperfections, and embrace everything to understand the immense power of love and dedication. As a writer once said, "Books are the most patient and pleasant companions. They will never abandon you." There are many difficult thresholds in life, but thanks to books, I have been able to overcome them easily. Books nourish and enrich the inner selves of anyone, helping us accumulate and change little by little to become a better version of ourselves. Where our footsteps cannot reach, the words in books can take us. If we don't read books and continuously enrich our inner content, then even if we travel thousands of miles to every corner of the world, we will still be just like a mail carrier. Each book is like a door. Where you go is up to you. I have a cousin in the countryside who once messaged me asking, "What should I choose now? My father says girls shouldn't study too much. Finishing high school is enough. Get a part-time job to help the family, then get married." I asked her, "So, what do you think?" She said, "I don't know. My father is only giving me money to study for the exam this year. I really want to, but over the past 3 years, I've lost fundamental knowledge. I'm afraid that even if I take the exam, I'll fail, and then my family will criticize and blame me." I told her, "Don't be afraid. If you don't pass this year, take it again next year. I'll help with the tuition for prep classes." Because looking back at my own final years of high school, a serious illness suddenly struck me, preventing me from taking the university entrance exam at that time. A year later, when I recovered, the official exam time was less than a month away. No one believed I could pass. Even my relatives said it would be better to prepare for a factory job. Only my mother supported me from beginning to end. Finally, with all my possible effort, I succeeded in reviewing all the high school senior year knowledge, took practice tests within a month, and got accepted into my desired major. So, in my cousin's case, I believe that with enough determination and someone to support her, she would surely succeed. Even if she didn't get into her desired major, the process of cultivating perseverance would greatly benefit her later in life. However, she eventually gave up. Indeed, the saying, "our destiny lies in our own hands," is not wrong. More accurately, a life's destiny has many crossroads. A correct decision will lead you to a higher energy level and life experience, but on some paths, one wrong step can lead to 1,000 more wrong steps. In such life decisions, going to school and reading books is the best way to turn the tide. Out there, countless people yearn to go to school, yearn to immerse themselves in books, but cannot. So, if you have the opportunity to study and read, don't complain about the difficulties it brings. Even if you face circumstances that prevented you from going to school when you were young, don't be sad, because you can still improve yourself every day through reading and enhancing your knowledge. If conditions allow in the future, you can also attend university courses for older adults. This is not unusual, because when I studied abroad, many of my classmates were older, even 50 or 60. Not only was this completely normal, but everyone greatly admired such special classmates. Along with that, be patient and passionate about reading. Believe that if you maintain this habit that brings many unexpected benefits, books will one day touch your heart and mind, completely changing your life. They will help you live calmly and strongly, face every challenge, provide you with deep insights, open your mind, help you develop skills, and easily find true joy in life. Turning 20, the decision to stop at the right time to go further. Annie had tasted the forbidden fruit during high school, so at 25, she was especially cautious in love and marriage. However, young people at that time generally felt pressured to settle down, marry early, and have children. Because if someone remained single for too long, they would be gossiped about, even ostracized. To fit in and have something in common with her peers, Annie followed the crowd, put her career aside, and married as early as possible. Within a few years, she married a man unsuited for her and consecutively gave birth to 2 sons. Her husband came from an intellectual family, working in government. After marriage, her in-laws provided her with abundant material comforts. They moved into a large, well-equipped house. But married life made Annie overworked and exhausted. Every day, she worked, did housework, and looked after her children. After giving birth to her second child, she abandoned her spiritual life, stopped reading and writing, focusing only on practical matters. Her husband occasionally helped with some chores but was mostly absent. Influenced by the writer Beauvoir and the feminist movement in France, she had once pursued egalitarian love and desired a spiritual connection and mutual support between husband and wife. But in reality, apart from talking about parents and children, she and her husband had virtually no common ground for conversation anymore. Their lives were very boring. Everything rested on her shoulders. If Annie were absent for just one day, the family simply wouldn't function normally. Life continued like this for over 10 years. In those busy moments, Annie sometimes felt her existence was very inauthentic. It was unimaginable that the 20-year-old Annie, full of passion, had sworn an oath to publish a novel by 25, or she would rather die. Yet now, her pen lay discarded in a corner, and she neglected her appearance. Hair pulled back, dress loose and flowing, a smile on her lips, but always looking tired. At 40, she felt she had drifted very, very far from her true self. During a family trip to Spain, sitting on the terrace of a cafe, Annie specifically observed women aged 35 to 50. Then she suddenly asked herself, these women who were once radiant young girls, why have they become like this now? Annie suddenly felt a wave of existential dread wash over her. She seemed to realize the truth. She only had one life. If she continued living this way, by the time she was old, she would still be a soulless, weary, bored machine, indifferent to everything. Therefore, she finally decided to resolutely end this mistaken marriage and live alone with her 2 sons. You will find that sometimes, timely damage control, knowing when to stop, is the highest form of discipline. There's a Western proverb that says, "Don't cry over spilled milk." Yet, why do so many people still cannot resist this and live their whole lives crying over spilled milk? In economics, there's a term called sunk cost, referring to expenses already paid that cannot be recovered. Life is the same. Many people are often reluctant to stop because they've already invested so much in sunk costs. They buy a movie ticket, watch for half an hour, realize it's a terrible film, but still watch it to the end because they've already paid for the ticket. They arrive at a tourist destination, feel disappointed and exhausted by the packed crowds, and everything is not like the advertised pictures, but they still try to see it all because they've already come all this way. They stay with someone for many years, even knowing that person has all sorts of bad habits: gambling, alcoholism, deceit, betrayal, and doesn't cherish them, but because they've invested too much money, time, and emotions, they continue. They work a job that drains both physical and mental energy every day, but because they've been an employee for so long, they don't want to switch. When sunk costs arise, people instinctively grit their teeth and continue. This mindset is deeply ingrained in the subconscious of many of us. We are always afraid of loss. We could achieve more if we bravely stopped at the right time. Yakos once said that 90% of life's pain comes from not knowing how to timely prevent mistakes. Everyone will make mistakes, go down the wrong path, misjudge people, or do the wrong thing. But making mistakes is not scary. What's scary is knowing you're wrong but not having the courage to accept the loss and give yourself a chance to start over. As writer Lin Yudeng once said, "It's better to abandon wisely than to persevere blindly." Sometimes, stopping is precisely how you go further. This is a type of progress, and one could even call it a spectacular victory. If your body and mind are too tired now, the only way is to allow yourself to stop. Stop to look inward, to have the courage to turn a new page for yourself. Let go of the bad things in the past, steer clear of toxic people, and end unworthy perseverance. The paramount wisdom of humanity is to always leave room for retreat and know when to stop at the right moment. When passing middle age, don't hesitate to expand the boundaries of your life. The future is the sum of changing efforts. In her later years, Annie shed all shackles, no longer limiting herself to the roles of a wife or a mother. She lived as herself. She moved elsewhere, sold old belongings, bid farewell to the past, and began to enjoy life to the fullest. Her attitude towards raising her children also changed. She no longer meticulously managed housework or worried about every move of her children. Instead, she encouraged them to live independently. She also let go of her anxiety about age and social status, no longer caring about the gaze and judgment of others. When her children started their own families and moved out, she became even more comfortable in the tranquility of her solitary life. Like a free-spirited young woman, she spent her days reading, continuously enriching her inner self. Although very old and her face clearly bore the marks of time, she was still full of energy. She never stopped reading, never stopped writing, achieving breakthroughs in her works. Finally, at 82, she was honored with the most prestigious award in literature, the Nobel Prize. Her story is not only a powerful source of motivation, but also an endless well of inspiration for many people. It was by freeing herself from the shackles of the world that she gained strong resilience and experienced a wonderful old age. Life seems very long, but the time you can live for yourself is incredibly short. The truth is, many people live their whole lives for others. When little, they study for their parents. In youth, they pursue success for the recognition of those around them. When married, they live for their spouse and children. In old age, their spiritual life is entirely invested in their grandchildren. At the end of their lives, looking back, they seemingly accomplished many things, but in reality, they were just repeating a pattern within a narrow space. Only when a person no longer defines themselves by who I am, who I was, who I must become, and isn't limited by roles or titles, can they develop their full potential and expand the boundaries of their lives. In her later years, Annie found the true purpose of life: to allow herself to do what she loved, aligning with her human values. A person who always enriches their inner self and calmly embraces who they are will encounter countless beautiful things and surprises on life's journey. Compared to other Nobel laureates, the stories Annie wrote seem ordinary. She truthfully recorded the changes of the times and of herself, with no romanticized past upheavals, no shocking plot twists. However, whether it was her school days, her growing up, her marriage, or her solitary old age, her stories deeply resonated with readers because this is the very ordinary state of life for almost everyone. As the philosopher Nietzsche once said, "No one can build a bridge for you across the river of life, no one but yourself." Life is like a long river. At different bends in the river, we will always encounter our own difficulties. But I always believe that when you cross thousands of rivers and mountains, overcome all ups and downs, as long as you have the desire for awakening, no matter what, you will ultimately be able to return to yourself.